This is Here's What I Learned, a podcast that explores the lessons found in business and life. I'm your host, Jackie Hayes, a business consultant and strategist, a reader, homesteader, and superhero fan. In this show, I talk with coaches and service providers. We explore the lessons they have learned running an online business, embracing feminist business practices, rejecting hostile culture, and embracing their roles as CEOs. Welcome to another episode of Here's What I Learned. Today, I am talking with Sarah Heeter. Sarah is a podcast producer and strategic consultant, and the founder and CEO of PodFox Media. She helps business owners strategically launch, grow, and monetize podcasts in order to grow their audiences, establish their expertise, and make more money. So obviously on today's podcast, we're going to be talking about, podcasts, but we're also covering a whole lot more, including what it's like to work with your romantic partner. I hope you enjoy today's episode. So Sarah, I am going to kick things off with a rapid fire question, and that is, what have you been learning about lately?
So many things. Okay, I'm going to go with something personal. And so I have stepkids. I'm a stepmom, and I have 3 stepkids. They are 18, 20, and 23. And I came into their lives when they were teenagers. So I kind of went from 0 to full force with the whole parenting thing. And my youngest, I love to read, and my youngest really likes to read as well. And he really, really wanted to share his favorite series with me, which is Percy Jackson. And I had never read it. I watched, the movie, the original, that movie that came out, and I didn't even know there were multiple, so I didn't watch all of them. Which apparently is not well received by people who like the books, which I didn't even know they were different. I mean, I really didn't know anything about it. And so I've been working my way through this book or through these books. I'm on the last one. And it's funny because they are definitely middle grade books, and he is now a freshman in college, but they've been his favorite books for many years. And so it's something he really wanted to share with me. And so we've been talking a lot about the books, and I've been learning about what he loves about them and why they mean something to him. And of course, there's a new show that's coming out. And so we've been talking about the casting and everything like that. And so I've been learning about all things Percy Jackson lately.
I am all for that. I'm a huge mythology nerd, and so when Rick Riordan started writing all of these books, it didn't matter that they were middle grade, although I would have to argue that right now middle grade books are some of the best books that are being published out there. And these Percy Jackson books just sucked me in, and then everything that followed from that, with the Roman mythology and then the Norse mythology and the Egyptian mythology. And now my niece is a huge reader like me, and she's read the Percy Jackson series 3 or 4 times over at this point, and she's 10.
How old is your niece? 10. Yeah.
Yep, 10 years old. She's been a reader, been reading on her own since she was 4 years old, and she just got into those books. And so it's fun because it's something that she and I can talk about and share and have a common language.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And I think what people love about a book is so telling about them and so telling about where they are at the time that they're talking about it, because the same book can be something you love differently at different points in your life. And I'm a big rereader, a big rewatcher, because things mean different things depending on what's going on with you. So getting to talk with him about that, I just think this is such a critical age where, every age is critical, I guess. they all feel critical, right? But our youngest one starting college, turning 18, it feels very symbolic of defining what is our relationship with the kids going to look like as they're adults and they have their own independent lives, and figuring out how to find ways to share things so that that relationship stays really meaningful into their adulthood is important to me. And so even though I will never book shame. Listen, anything that will get you to read, if you like it, like it. There's no such thing as book shaming to me. Also, middle grade reading is not my first choice. I'll read YA, but middle grade is like a whole other level of it's not for me, but that's okay because he loves it. And so I just want to share it with him. So anyway, that's not business related really much at all, but our lives are so much more than just business, right? And that's one of the
Very
beautiful
much.
things about being an entrepreneur.
Yes. Well, and the best thing about being an entrepreneur is you actually can have more freedom to bring in who you are as a whole person when it's not acceptable when you're like a W-2 employee.
And you just don't have anything left. I think about this so much of how depleted I was working a quote unquote 9 to 5, which really wasn't 9 to 5. It was really like 7 to 6:30, right? And so by the time you get home, you maybe make dinner or grab takeout and you do laundry and you go to bed so you can just get up and do the whole thing the next day. I didn't have much left for the people who mean the most and the things that mean the most. And so one of the most important things for me in my entrepreneurship journey is that my priorities are straight, right? Like I was spending most of my waking hours with people I didn't care about, doing work I didn't care about. And now I'm spending all of my hours on things that matter. And that is just a completely different way to live.
Well, you are setting the priorities as opposed to having somebody set them for you and then having to create your life around somebody else's priorities.
Absolutely. Yep.
And you were talking about working with people you may not even like. But now I'm guessing you work with somebody you actually do like. Is that correct?
Yeah. So coworker wise, my team right now, I have a customer experience manager who is somebody who lives in a different state, right? We work together remotely. And then my other team member is my husband. And so we are partners in business and in life. But actually it's been really interesting because that dynamic of working together in this context has been really a growth experience. And I think anybody who's talked about bringing their partner into their business can relate. But he really emphasized to me, he still wants this to be my business. He loves that it's mine. He wants to work for me. And I was really nervous actually about bringing in kind of this hierarchy into our relationship that felt like a potential for danger. And so I was really nervous, but we've been officially doing this since like February or March. And he and I have just worked on how we communicate and making sure that we're leading with protecting our relationship first and figuring out what works for both of us. So, yeah, it's been a learning experience, but it's been wonderful, honestly. Really, really a treasure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's first reaction is, oh, I could never work with my partner. I think for me, probably one of the biggest challenges I could foresee is learning when we're in partner mode and when we're in business mode. What kind of boundaries have you guys set up for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the biggest thing that we've had to kind of work on is what time of day we both like to work. So, for one thing, this is kind of interesting. Entrepreneurs love to talk about their morning routine, so I want to share mine, which is related. We we do not wake up to an alarm unless we have to catch a flight. So, so we sleep in until we naturally wake up together. We spend quality time in the morning together, which includes making some kind of brunch together, etc., and spend a little quality time over brunch. And then we both go separately and get the stuff done during the day that we need to get done. I really love working in the afternoons and evenings. He really loves working in the evenings and at night. And so I had to kind of learn if I told him something needed to be done by, let's say, Thursday, right? Then in corporate speak, Thursday means at 5. For me, Thursday kind of just means before I go to bed. But what that would sometimes lead to is if he's working on it at night, I have to stay up until he's finished. and I might be really tired or ready to just sign off my computer. Like, I don't want to be sitting here on hold for work anymore. And so we had to kind of figure that out of basically I would tell him the day before I needed it so that he could do his part the day before I needed to do my part, if that makes sense. So that was kind of our biggest learning curve, I would say, of establishing boundaries together. But now the business has been growing so much and we've gotten so much work in, which we're really grateful and happy and excited about. But that has meant that he's having to work more at the same time. We really love being together. So if it almost feels like his office is upstairs, mine is downstairs, and it almost feels like when we have to go to our separate offices, like we're being punished. Like, okay, go to your corner, you know? And so now we've just started really thriving on if you have work that needs to get done at a certain time, that gives me an opportunity to work too. Or, oh, if you have work to do, I guess I might as well get work done too. And so that way we can spend more time together. But I think a shared office might even be in our future. We're like very together. We really enjoy being together. So people who say they could never work with their partner or something like that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, we could literally even share an office and it would be good. So, yeah.
I think it depends too. A lot of times when we say that, we're thinking about, our partners are so different from us. They have different interests, etc. But like with my partner and I, there are certain things that we do really enjoy doing together, and we make a really good team because we have different skill sets, etc. And we enjoy that time together. I mean, obviously, there's frustration moments here or there.
Sure.
But if our business was something that we both had an interest in, then it wouldn't be any different than when he and I love to go and build things out in the yard for like the garden and stuff. So it really isn't really different. It's just one's earning you money, whereas the other things maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting too, because actually he introduced me to podcasting in the first place. Like I didn't even know what a podcast was until he and I were first dating. And he said, "What podcasts do you listen to?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is." And he could not believe that I did not know what that was. Little did he know that in searching for podcasts for ambitious women, really thinking in terms of corporate, what I stumbled on were podcasts for entrepreneurs and women who want to build businesses and what building a business entails. And that actually took me on a sort of 5-year journey of learning about entrepreneurship, deciding I really want the opportunity to run my own business. And not only would I end up running my own business as a result of that, but it's literally about podcasting. So he actually, I mean, that is definitely a shared interest. I would say the projects that we work on, the accounts that we work on tend to be projects I'm more interested in, people I'm more drawn to, and they aren't always podcasts he would choose to listen to, right? But that's all right. It's he is a very intuitive, emotional person, and so even podcasts that maybe tend to be geared more towards women, he still finds really interesting. He still learns a lot from. So it's that would be one way. I guess it's not really a shared interest, but the idea of podcasting in general, he finds really interesting too.
So tell me about your journey from corporate to now running the company that you're running.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I thought podcasts about running a business were so interesting, first of all, because I got bitten by the bug, right? I'm interested in being my own boss or whatever. The other part of that was both of my last 2 quote unquote corporate jobs were actually working for local small businesses. And so I also in my last role, I was in an executive role in marketing and operations in this small business in my local community. And in order to support the 2 business partners who were running that business, I felt like, well, this is still really relevant to my job. And it felt like, I think it was almost an excuse, if I'm going to self-coach here a little bit, of I can be interested in this and I can learn about entrepreneurship because it's relevant to my job, right? And then there were, just like everybody's story, lots of people have this story, but there were multiple rounds of layoffs. And to be honest, I genuinely was at a point where I thought I was immune to them because I had recently, in light of all these other layoffs, I had been promoted. I had gotten a raise. I had gotten all of these, I I would say, public displays of recognition from the business. And I had helped them launch this podcast, and it was a year in, it was going really, really well. And I thought I had done a really good job building enough value that I was immune, and I was not immune. And so, as the primary earner family of five, a month before the Christmas holiday, I found myself laid off. And the idea of walking, I'm an Enneagram 3, so I define myself by my accomplishments. That's like important to know. But the idea of having been laid off like that and taking a blow like that and truly being blindsided in that way, the idea of walking into interviews in new offices, meeting new people, and putting my best self forward felt completely disheartening. The idea that I know, this sounds I mean, to me it's accurate, but it's things women aren't supposed to say, right? I know that I'm smart and talented. I know that I bring massive value. And I also was so frustrated by the fact that for however many years, my time and effort and energy and talent was all being poured into someone else's vision and someone else's wealth and someone else's legacy. I was building that for other people and not for myself. And where did that leave my family at the end of the day? As soon as they needed to make cuts to their budget, right? Like, I just get cut. I'm not a person. My value doesn't matter, right? Like, and then how do I even measure my value as a person? Because again, going back to my Enneagram, and it was a whole journey. And so I said to my partner, what if I try to do my own thing for a little while? And what if we see if we can make that work, you know? And so we looked at our budget and we figured out a whole plan of like, you need to make some money by this date. And that will, depending on how much you make, that will extend how long you can keep going, right? And so in 2019, I started my business. I had this whole vision for this high level marketing and operations strategic consulting that I could help small businesses look at their 1, 3, and 5 year goals and then help them come up with plans for marketing and operations to achieve those goals. And I thought, this is going to be a high ticket sell. This is going to be bringing so much value. I'm going to be a consultant, all of this stuff. And a podcast may or may not be part of that, right? But very quickly, even in 2019, what I discovered is that what people really wanted from me was podcasting. And so I made that pivot to just focus on podcasting because we had that drop dead date. I needed to make money, some money, right? And at least with managing people's podcasts, it's recurring revenue. So I knew I was going to continue making money each month, and that was going to extend our budget. And then the pandemic happened in 2020. And thank goodness I had already started my business. And also, how kind of fortuitous that it ended up being a thing that everybody and their mother wanted to start a podcast in quarantine. So I was able to build a business, and I'm still kind of pinching myself that it worked and it's still working. And oh, I hope I never have to work a 9 to 5 again.
I know there will be a slow month here or two, and I'm like, what do I need to do so that I don't have to get a job? Like, what? And that's the wonderful thing about being an entrepreneur, is that you can just get creative. You're like, okay, well, everybody keeps asking me for this. Well, why don't I just add that? Try it out, see what it's like. And if it doesn't work, It doesn't work. It's not a big deal.
Absolutely. And I also keep telling myself, if I've built this once, I can build it again. Like, now that I know that I can do it and I know how much I love it, then I know I can do it again and again and again. I could build a million businesses. It's just, what am I focused on at any given point? And so I know I can pivot. I know I can start from scratch. I know I can do it, because at the time that I started my business, especially because just a few months in, 6 months in, the pandemic happened and my partner got laid off. So then we had only this. This was the whole thing our whole family relied on. Rent is due, right? So like, their failure was not an option, and we didn't, you know?
Why do you think podcasting is a good way for a business to get out there and market themselves?
My favorite thing about podcasting, well, there's two things. One thing that I love about podcasting is a little bit tongue in cheek, which is that you don't have to look good on video. I am a theater kid, and so you'd think I just love performing, but man, it is emotionally exhausting to be on video. And so recording all of this video content for all of these other platforms honestly exhausts me. And I know that I would be good at it if I made the time and effort to do it. But man, podcasting is easy. As you can tell, I love to talk. You put me in front of a microphone, you could literally pick any topic and I could talk about it. So that is one thing that I really love. But from a business perspective, the other thing that I really love is that the barrier to entry is so low. So, really, any of us can start a podcast, and we all have experience and knowledge that could bring value to other people if only other people would listen. And podcasting is an opportunity for anybody to record what they think, what they know, to ask questions, to have conversations, to generate dialogue around whatever topic and to put it out there. And the whole premise of what I've built my business on is that podcasting is an opportunity for those of us who do not feel like we necessarily have a seat at the table to build our own platform and use our voices because our voices matter. And so that's really what I love about podcasting is that it's such a huge opportunity with such a low barrier of entry.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you could do it on your voice memo of your phone to get started.
That's how I started mine, absolutely. And using the wired headphones that came with phones for a long time. I guess now they don't, but they did for a long time. So everybody's got pairs laying around somewhere in your junk drawer or whatever. Literally, that is a pretty good microphone to start with, honestly. So yeah, it is it's very doable no matter who you are. And I love also one of my favorite benefits of audio only content is that it mimics the intimacy of a phone call. So people who listen to podcasts regularly, it's essentially mimicking having a phone call with that person for on average 25 to 45 minutes per week. That's most podcasts, right? And how many people in your life do you have a phone call with for 25 to 45 minutes a week? I mean, that number is slim to none. And so being able to mimic that intimacy with those listeners is an invaluable know, like, and trust factor. I mean, you can literally become one of the most influential people in their lives. And then multiply that number by a couple hundred or a couple thousand or hundreds of thousands. And it's really wild.
Yeah, I think there's some podcasts I've been listening to. They've been around for like 9 years now. And so before they had kids, before they got married, and I know I heard a joke somewhere and I felt like, oh, they're talking about me here, where like the wife is talking to the husband and she's like, my friend so-and-so. And he's like, is it really your friend or do they host a podcast?
Yeah, I've seen a meme that's just like that. And I love to quote that when I talk to people I do a free strategy session for anybody who's interested in starting a podcast. It's really 90 minutes, which sounds intense, but it goes so fast. It's 45 minutes of launch strategy and then some time for questions. And of course, I share what I do and we see if it's a good fit to work together. But on those calls, I always share a meme very similar to that saying, I made a new friend today, a real friend or a podcast friend. But that's how it feels.
Yes, very, very much so. And it's nice because you can literally put your phone in your back pocket. And what I do is like some tasks that I hate to do, like gardening, or like pulling the weeds in the garden. I say to myself, I'm going to pull the weeds until this podcast episode is done. And before I know it, 45 minutes have gone by and I've completely enjoyed myself out in the weeds because I was listening to a podcast I enjoyed.
I hear from people who listen. I have a podcast myself that I've been doing since 2018 that is for Girl Scout troop leaders. And I hear from people who listen all the time that they listen in the pickup and drop off line for school. That line can be such a beast and it can be such a source of stress and frustration. And if you can listen to a podcast during that time, yeah, it's going to make it go faster. It's going to be pleasant. You're going to learn something. It's great.
Yep. I used to commute for 45 minutes to an hour one way each day. And so you get a lot of podcasts in when you do that.
Oh, I bet. Oh my gosh, what a commute.
Yeah. But now I work from home. about an hour and 20 minutes away from the city. So like whenever I go back to the city, I'm like, yay, I could catch up on all my podcasts.
Yes. I'll listen to podcasts sometimes if I'm doing dishes or like you said with weeds, any task that I don't feel like doing. It's a great time to be like, okay, it's going to be fine. You'll catch up on your podcasts.
They always say like when you're trying to build a new habit, if you compare it with something you really enjoy doing, like listening to a podcast and taking a walk or whatever it happens to be. And so, yeah, that was how I got myself motivated to do those tasks that I don't enjoy. So,
man, I should start doing that with walking. That'd be good.
You said that in, 2020 or whatever, COVID, it's like never ending at this point.
Right.
When it first hit and everybody was like, okay, now I'm going to start my podcast. When you have people come to you, do they ever say, oh my God, I want to start a podcast, but there's already so many podcasts out there. How am I ever going to build an audience?
Yes,
what do you say to them about that?
Everyone says
everyone.
That. Okay,
so
the reality is, I'm going to blow your mind. If you like numbers, and I know, Jackie, I know you do.
Oh, yeah.
If you like numbers, this is going to blow your mind. Okay, of all of the people in the world, half of people over 12 have listened to podcasts. Okay. And that number is continuing to go up. Now, people over 12 is a really random statistic, and I know that. So I'm just going to go ahead and say the reason why it's people over 12, I think, in this study is because content that's created for kids, I think, is marketed to people under 12. So I think that's where that number 12 comes from. Obviously, 12 is still a kid. That's like very random and very young. But anyway, lots and lots of people have listened to podcasts. Lots of them are listening to podcasts regularly. Right. And of all of the people listening, there are only, and think about how many billions of people there are in the world. There are only just under 3 million podcasts online, like period, less than 3 million. And of those less than 3 million podcasts, only somewhere around 40% have released a new episode in the past 90 days. So most of them are not even active. So now we're looking at this number of what, maybe under 2,000 podcasts that are even active, currently releasing content. Think of all of the categories that there are. And people who listen to podcasts regularly, on average, they listen to 7 shows in rotation at any given time. So it's just like TV. You don't have one TV show that you might sit down to watch, right? You have a few, and it depends what you're in the mood for. So podcasting works very similarly. So people who listen regularly have about 7 shows in their on average in their rotation. And out of all of the people listening, those are the only shows they have to choose from. The reality is that people who love podcasts are hungry for content that has been created specifically with them in mind. So if you can be strategic about who you're creating content for and what you want them to get out of it, there are so many people out there who want it. So actually, it's still a completely blue ocean. That's the long and the short of it.
I think too, we get on, like, say, Apple Podcasts, and we look at, the feed that they show you of recommended shows. And of course, they're showing you big names, like huge podcasts, and they're produced by, Vice or NPR or things along those lines. And I feel like a lot of times Apple itself and whatever algorithms they use kind of bury some of the more high quality podcasts. And you really kind of I've had to dig for some of them. And whenever I see somebody on Instagram that I've been following for a while and realize that, oh, wait a minute, you have a podcast? What do you mean you have a podcast? I would have been listening this whole entire time. So I feel like we have to do a better job, probably, of talking about the fact that we have a podcast.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. My recommendation, if you have a podcast, is to talk about it in some way every day. And that feels really overwhelming, but the reality is we know algorithmically people aren't seeing the content every piece of content that we post. They just aren't. I mean, your mom might be like tracking every piece of content that you post really closely, but generally speaking, nobody else on the internet is tracking every single piece of content that you post. They just aren't. So talking about it every day is really important. And one of the things that I do every month is I share with my email list a list of prompts for the month of ways to talk about your podcast on social media, because it can feel really repetitive, right? Nobody listens to those audio clips with the animated audiogram that it just doesn't get play, right? We all hope it will. We keep posting them because we keep hoping, like, this is a great clip. Doesn't that make you want to listen to my podcast? But it just doesn't have the conversion that we would hope it does. And most people are scrolling social media on mute anyway. So honestly, it just doesn't have the same effect. But I digress. There's lots of ways to talk about your podcast. There's lots of things to talk about, talking about what you love, talking about what you're excited about, talking about topics that you've talked about in the past or that are upcoming, showing pictures of your microphone, asking people what they want you to ask next. I just recently did a series on my own podcast where I said, if we went to coffee together and you could sit down and pick my brain about anything, what would you ask me? And what's been really great is the podcast I do is very research driven. It takes a ton of work to put those episodes out. But in this way, by posing it as if we went to coffee together, well, I'm not going to do any research if we're at coffee together. I'm just going to give you my opinion. So now with this mini series I'm doing on my podcast, when I'm answering these questions, I'm not doing any research. And I will say, this is with no research. This is just my opinion and experience, as if we were at coffee together. I'll remind you. And what's been amazing is now that gives me so much more content for social media to post. And also, people are coming to my social media to ask me more questions as they hear these episodes. I will never run out of content again because I just keep getting more questions. So anyway, there's lots of ways to talk about it on social media, but I think you have to talk about it all the time. And you have to tell everyone you know you have it. When people ask what you do, mention that you also host a podcast. Like, that needs to be part of your answer. Even the person cutting your hair, when they say, "So what do you do? What do you do? What's your work like? What do you do? What's your day like?" You find ways to talk about your podcast, because the reality is either they're interested in your podcast or they know someone who is. And if they will recommend it to somebody, one of my clients who came in the other day was just talking about a podcast about that exact topic, then that person's like, oh, great, now I need to find it, right? So the more we can talk about it, the better. And it actually is not annoying. And if somebody does find it annoying, that says more about them than it does about you. So talk about it a lot.
One of my experiences with having the podcast, because I do an interview style podcast, is that it has been great in building my network. And I've actually had collaboration opportunities come up because of having a guest on the podcast and finding, oh, wow, we have a lot of the similar values. Our offerings are similar, or somebody's starting a program and they want a guest speaker or something along those lines. And so it's just been, I started a podcast because I like having deep one-on-one conversations with people. Yep. And so it's had all kinds of additional side benefits where I'm like, I just get to talk to people. That's new because I love meeting new people.
Yes.
And this builds, that takes that wall down of the discomfort of what would we talk about? Well, it's already built in. So. I
always tell people that, let's say you want to do a podcast for badass entrepreneur women, right? Which I think is a running theme on this show, right? That we tend to talk to these badass entrepreneur women. So if you wanted to do a podcast for entrepreneur women who they're kicking butt and they're taking names and they want to get out there, they want to change the world, make the world a better place, they want to have an impact, right? So let's say one of the topics you want to explore is how that impacts your personal relationships. How does that impact your relationship dynamics in your marriage, or if you're dating? And let's say you decide, okay, I want to talk to like a marriage counselor or a professional relationship therapist about this. And you call them up and you say, all right, I've got questions. I want to know, as an ambitious, career-driven woman running my own business, how is this going to impact my relationship? And they're going to say, schedule an appointment. This is my hourly rate. But if you say, I have a podcast for badass entrepreneur women, and one of the things that's really important to them that they really want to know more about is how this is going to affect their relationship dynamics and how this is affecting their marriage and how this is affecting their dating. Will you come on my podcast and talk about that? They'll say, yes, here's an hour of my time for free. Ask me absolutely anything you want. I mean, it's an unbelievable opportunity. You can ask anybody you want to come on your podcast and just ask them the things you really want to know. So it doesn't have to be a podcast you already know a lot about. It can be, I want to learn a lot about this and I want to have these conversations and I'm willing to record them because other people will learn too.
Yeah, I had somebody say she wanted to get into the coaching business. So she just started a podcast and started interviewing a bunch of coaches. And she was like, that helped me decide whether or not I wanted to continue into coaching. And if I decided I did, then I was learning their, the lessons that they had learned so I could integrate those. And she's like, it was like being in a mastermind with all of these people who were willing to give me their time and their lessons and their ideas, etc.
Yes, but instead of paying $50K for access to that mastermind, like it's building business opportunities for you and it's virtually free.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is one piece of advice that you would want to give somebody who is thinking of launching a podcast?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to give two. One is whatever topic you are thinking of. The first thing that I always recommend people do is to make a list of potential episode ideas. You do not have to plan the episode out, right? But potential episode ideas. And it should pour out of you, and you should easily come up with 50 episode topics. If it doesn't, then we need to do more work on the overall idea for your podcast. And the reason I say 50 is not to be intense or intimidating. It's because there are 52 weeks in a year. And if you did a weekly podcast, 50 ideas is about a year's worth of content. And at that point, if you were to do a year's worth of content and then start over on that list, which you do not have to be that methodical, by the way, but if you were to start over on that list, no one will notice. Like that's plenty of time that you could repeat the same topics and you could just do that to 50 over and over. If you can't come up with 50, if you can come up with 4 or 7, then, well, that's going to make this a lot harder to actually move forward with your podcast. So that's one thing that I would say is to start there. The other thing I would say, and I call this my signature strategy, but I'm just going to give you a very high level overview of this. There's 3 things that I think you need to be really clear on before you start. And then know that these 3 things can change over time, but you need to be clear on them at all times. They need to be at the forefront. So number 1 is who's listening to your podcast? Who is it for? And the answer cannot be everybody, right? Even if everybody would benefit from your podcast, if they listen to it, they're not all going to listen to it. They are not all seeking content out like that. So my big key here is who is actively seeking out content like this. And also out of all the people who are actively seeking out content, who are your favorite people out of those people? If you were going to fill a room with those people, who would you want in the room? Because if you love who you're talking to, it's going to make it more fun. Okay, so that's 1. 2, and my signature strategy is what do you want them to get out of it? You need to have goals for your audience, right? And then the third thing is what do you want to get out of it? You need to have goals for yourself. And that could be for yourself, your life, your business, your brand, whatever it looks like, you have to have goals for yourself. And you can have multiple, but you have to have goals for yourself. And one of those goals has to be that it's fun. It has to be fun. If it's not fun, it's just another chore on your to-do list, and none of us need that. So it has to be fun. And so those are the 3 things that you need to know. You need to know who's listening, what you want them to get out of it, and what you want to get out of it. And if you don't do all 3 of those things, your podcast is not going to get traction. It's not. And you'll probably quit. So those are my 3 things. And that's actually the strategy that we dig deep into for that 45 minutes of the 90-minute free strategy session, which, by the way, is completely for everybody. Whether you have a podcast that's not getting traction or you just think you might want to start one day, it's literally me. We're live. It's one-on-one on Zoom. You can literally schedule it. So if you're interested in podcasting, let's chat. I'd love to talk to people about their podcasts.
Well, where are they going to be able to find you then?
Yeah, so you can find me mainly on Instagram. I am technically on Facebook. It's like you're supposed to be everywhere, but it's really hard to be everywhere. As I said, it's emotionally exhausting. So I'm mostly on Instagram at Sarah K. Heeter. You can also check out my website. I recommend sarahkheeter.com/results. That will show you some of the results that we've gotten with some of the amazing projects that I get to work on. And The people I'm working with are doing incredible things with their podcast, leveraging their podcasts to get book deals and international speaking gigs. And some of them are in the top 1% of podcasts in the world, and so on and so forth. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I've got a selection of some of the cool stuff people are doing to leverage their podcast there. And you can also schedule time with me. It's completely free to just chat about your podcast idea. Just get my brain on your business for 90 minutes. Pretty fun.
I will also say I am on your email list, and you put out some very, very helpful information.
Thank you.
The copywriting for the episode descriptions and stuff was incredibly helpful. So
I really get on our list. Saying that. So. I will go ahead and say about my email list. I hate email lists. I hate getting email. I hate opening email. So my emails are not more than once a week. And when they do come, it's always going to be with something actionable, some kind of resource or a challenge or an actionable tip or takeaway. I cannot personally, as a recipient, I cannot stand receiving email just for the sake of emailing. So if you do join my email list, it's always going to be some kind of strategy or actionable item, something like that.
Yeah, they're good. They're worth subscribing to.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that.
You're welcome. Well, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks for letting me talk at you for however long we've been on the phone.
That is the point of the podcast. So. Everybody go find Sarah on Instagram, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Here's What I Learned. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow and leave a review. Remember, there's always something new to learn. Stay curious and never stop asking questions.